Welcome to Magical Books for Kids, a podcast sponsored by Magic Everywhere, Inc., a company based in Florida. Hosted by Michael John Sullivan, this is your place to hear the very best children's stories and an opportunity to get to know your favorite authors. Now, here is Michael John Sullivan.
Welcome to Magical Books for Kids. I'm Michael John Sullivan. Again, thank you for joining us for another free podcast. This podcast is sponsored by MagicEverywhereInc.com, and it is free on all platforms, including Apple, Spotify, Google Play, YouTube, as well as our website. We are honored and happy to have for a second time children's author Lisa Jacovsky. Lisa has done a tremendous job in bringing the issue of autism to the forefront for many parents and children. So Lisa, thank you again for joining us here on Magical Books for Kids.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me a second time. I feel special being here again.
Well, you are special because you're bringing something special to our audience. And the book that we're talking about, first of all, is Let's Talk, A Story of Autism and Friendship. When we last had you on, we spoke a little bit about that book. How is that going now? How has been the reception? I noticed I checked the Amazon site, because that's where they can get that particular book on Amazon.com, Let's Talk, A Story of Autism and Friendship. And there were over 50 reviews, and they were all like 5 stars. So congratulations on that reception.
Thank you so much. It's doing absolutely amazing. It's a pretty cool ride, and everyone's loving it. I just received another review this morning. A woman came back and read book 1. She had read book 2 and loved it. And it's been pretty awesome. You know, I feel pretty blessed to be able to have this platform and be received like this and make changes out there.
Well, I'm glad that people are being received well. I have a little summary of the book, and again, it's the book. It's Lisa's book, which is Let's Talk: A Story of Autism and Friendship, and it's about Harper, a 7-year-old little girl that is typically developing, loves going to the pool, just like my daughters. They love the pool. One day,
Right?
one day she gets to the pool. She meets a new friend, a little girl who's also 7 years old. She has no idea that this friend is any different than her. All Harper knows is she has a new friend that wants to play in her tube with her. They both love to swim at the pool and want to play together. However, Emma has little communication skills. Emma can make sounds and not words, and flaps her hands when she is excited. When Harper realizes she cannot communicate with her new friend, she becomes determined to find a way to do it. In talking to her mom, Harper is told that Emma has autism spectrum disorder. Determined to not let this stand in the way of her new friendship, she becomes determined to learn how to communicate with Emma. She begins to learn about autism spectrum disorder and asks Emma's mom to show her the different ways she can communicate with her new friend. Harper becomes excited to begin to use these new tools to communicate with Emma. The two become inseparable from that day on. Harper introduces Emma to all her friends and teaches them how to communicate with her. Harper and Emma become the center of their circle of friends and begin to have many more adventures together. Congratulations on it, first of all, on a terrific story. And it's a story about acceptance and also learning to communicate, which is, of course, the biggest thing in our social situation, of course, is that the ability to communicate actually lowers the walls between us all. And I think if we all learned how to communicate a little bit better, I think the world would be a lot better place. But that's for another story for another time. So congratulations on the story. What inspired and prompted you to write this particular story?
My career, my job, actually. I was working with a client, and she's kind of loosely based off of Emma that I have. And I just kept seeing the same thing over and over, that, you know, children were having issues engaging with their friends that were neurotypical. And my client at the time, she had gone to the park and she was playing pretty nicely with one of her friends, but she wouldn't get off the swing because she didn't understand that she had to. And her friend that was neurotypical kept trying and getting frustrated. but she still played with her. So that kind of just, was almost like the straw that broke the camel's back in a positive way that made me think like, I can write something almost loosely based off her to kind of show other kids that they can play with these little ones and show families too that, the diagnosis of autism is not something negative. And that's really where that came from. I've always wanted to write a book and, I never really knew what I wanted to write. And this just kind of came at the right time. And it's been really fun ever since.
Yeah, the idea behind the story where a girl learns why her friend isn't communicating the way she's communicating is an exceptional idea to bring forth.
Thank you.
Because I mentioned because we're communication, I think, is a lost art today. I mean, look what you have on social. Yeah, you have on Twitter and you have on
Mhm.
TikTok and all this. And while these are certain good things that come out of it, I think we've become less social than we've ever become before. And this is supposed to be socializing. So the interaction personally, face to face, is a lost art, I think.
I
And
agree.
yeah, and this helps. You're helping people to understand. You
Yeah.
certainly would help me. I don't understand the subject, so I've been educated about it.
Thank
Right?
you. Oh, that's
And
exactly what I want to do with my books. And you're totally right. And, with children with autism, it's social skills and especially communication that is the most affected. Every single one of my clients I currently have and that I have worked with over the years, they came because of communication. And that's really the biggest thing. And once parents see their child can't communicate, they get anxiety, they get stressed out, they think they're never going to be able to. They don't know about these resources and other ways for communication. And that was the idea behind the book too, is to really show these other things in applied behavior analysis that families may not know about. And then we go to social media and there's all kinds of negative things about autism. So having something like this, I thought would be an amazing resource to kind of show a positive side and show a view that I have of autism as well, and show that communication can take many different forms.
right. And as you mentioned, you've done two books. So before we
Yeah.
get to the podcast, are there more books in the works?
Absolutely. Book 3 is done and it's going to come out next April for Autism Awareness Month. I'm very excited. And I just finished writing book 4, so I'm super excited.
Okay, so you're quite busy and you're moving everything along
Yeah.
so
There's
productively.
going to
So
be 6
yeah,
books. So now I got to get busy writing 5 and then writing 6.
well, there you go. Okay, now I'd love to give a shout out to the families too that are supporting you. Right, that you have a big family support system. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
I do. I am very, very lucky and very, very blessed to have the support system that I do. My parents are angels. They are amazing. And my aunt that lives in Florida, if she was here, she'd be going to everything with us too. But she's amazing. She listens to everything about the stories. She's one of my biggest supporters, just like my parents. My parents are just, they're amazing. They give my business card out. They give me ideas. They come to all the book festivals with me now and sit there for the long hours.
Ah, yeah, I remember those. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So it's important to have that support system sitting there sometimes when it's kind of like nothing's happening and everything. And you're
yeah,
in New Jersey, so it probably gets a little colder as the fall months come along.
yeah,
So it's always good to have somebody providing you hot chocolate or coffee or something like that
right.
to keep you
Someone
warm.
to talk to, help put the tent up. And I even had a client come out to my first book festival. And that's the other thing that's really amazing is my clients have really
Uh,
rallied around me. I only bring it up if it comes up in conversation, but the reception is so incredible. And my friends are amazing. They promote it like crazy. They've all bought my books and they're so supportive. They come to the festivals if they can. And I have more clients coming this weekend to another festival I'm going to, and my best friend might be coming as well, my baby niece, which would be incredible, and if they can't be there, they text me and they put all over social media how proud of me they am and excited. And it's so incredible. My family, out in Arizona, my aunt, uncle, my grandmother, my brother, everybody is just, they're so supportive and they're so just whatever I do, it's not even a question. They're just there. They're like,
Right.
let's do this, let's go, and they're very honest. My dad, especially,
Mhm.
so funny, always has feedback. It's usually pretty positive. But
Right, but you
he
need
will,
somebody to be honest, so that's important to have somebody
yeah.
honest. Yes. Yes, I
And
have a
that's
business partner and she's like
right.
that to me. She says, "No, no, 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 this is not good." So, yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So
So
we
like
all
if
need
it
that.
wasn't for like my parents and my clients gave me some feedback from my book festival, like I wouldn't be doing certain things. And I really appreciate that. And I appreciate the support. And I feel so lucky because I don't think I would be anywhere near where I am without it. I will say too, another support system that I really love is all the other authors like
Right.
you contacted me about my podcast too. And,
Mm.
just today another author shared my book tour. It's just the support from people in general has been so overwhelmingly kind. And it just really, really makes me feel blessed to be in this position.
Right. Now, this particular podcast will be aired on October 27th, but you do
Yeah.
festivals right all year long, don't you? Or you get that big winter jacket out there, sit outside a
Oh,
little bit,
I am not doing the winter.
right?
I
Yeah.
have two more outdoors, and then I'm waiting on finding out about one that's indoors.
Okay. Much
And then
better.
I'm going to take a break till spring because
Okay.
one, I don't want to be out there in the cold, and two, my parents don't want to, and I'm not going to make them.
Okay. Now we should remark that you go to Giant games outside. So
I do, but not
when
in the winter. That was the one thing. It's so funny because I asked my dad, "You want to go to this Cowboys game or Eagles game?" But it's this month, and he's like, "No, not in the cold."
okay, so you avoid the cold weather of MetLife Stadium.
Yeah, it wasn't
That's
bad
it.
on Sunday at all. It was windy and I had this jacket on, but it's honestly beautiful.
Especially
It's
when they
really
stink.
funny.
Yeah, especially when they stink. I years ago, this is like really dating myself. I went to what they call the Ice Bowl, and that's when the guy flew the plane over the stadium at the
Uh-huh.
time, Giant Stadium, and flew to and said, and we've had 20 years or whatever it was of lousy football, and that's when everything changed for the Giants, and they picked Lawrence Taylor was drafted, but that's another thing. But
Yeah,
yeah, but
it can get
that's
cold there
oh
because you're
yeah.
up so high too. I've been
It
there in
was
like my winter coat.
Oh, it was like 10 degrees. And I said, you know what? We left at halftime. I said, I'm not going to sit here, and watch this.
My
Watch
dad
this.
told me stories of those days when he was younger and used to go with my grandfather when it was super cold.
Ah, yeah.
And like now that my dad's older, I just let
Yeah.
him pick and choose when he wants to go. That's
Good
all.
for you. It's what he deserves. He deserves it after watching
Exactly. Like it's the least I can do with all the support and help that he gives me.
all that lousy football we watched for years. All right. Well, okay. So let's talk about your podcast now. This is something
Absolutely.
that happened recently,
Brand new.
brand new. So it's No Limits Podcast, Speak Up Talk Radio. And first of all, how many podcasts have you done? Again, this is October. This is going to be aired on October 27th, and I understand you do what, one every week, or why don't you inform the listeners first of
Yeah.
all, how many, what is it about, and where can they find it?
So it's going to be aired every 2 weeks. The second
Okay.
episode actually came out today, a day early. It's typically going to be on Thursdays. And you can find it pretty much everywhere. You can find a podcast. So let me go and see. I have a whole bunch. You can find it on Speak Up Talk Radio. You can find it on Spotify, Spreaker, Podcast Addict, Podchaser, Deezer, and Google Podcasts.
All right. Now, when I put your name in Google, all this stuff popped up. So
Yeah.
if people, it's Lisa, of course, Lisa, and your
Mhm.
last name is spelled Jacovsky. So if they put your name in there, they'll find all your books as well, the information and everything. So why don't you tell us a little bit about this podcast? What are you trying? What's the message that you're trying to bring across? Is there some kind of angle, or there's some kind of theme that you have to it?
So I've started this podcast to talk more in detail about certain things. So, it's going to be about those few different things, different authors, different things in the field of being an author, marketing. I want to talk about psychology. I'm in applied behavior analysis, but I'm switching to clinical, and there's different things like acceptance and commitment therapy, mindfulness. I'm switching to school psychology. Those are things I want to talk about because not many people know. It's growing a fan base, but I think it'd be awesome to talk about it so it could reach more people because it could help a lot of people, and especially those that have autism. And I really want to talk about issues that little ones or adults with autism face too. There's, a company here called Popcorn for the People. They employ only individuals with autism, and they're a nonprofit. I have them coming on for an interview at some point. So I want to highlight these different things that people may not know about that are so important and so special. And I really want it to be about stuff like that. So I'm super excited.
So you want to open up avenues for other people
Mhm.
that are involved in this particular field. And you mentioned, of course, having a company on that only employs
Mhm.
people who have adults who have autism or are disabled in that sense. So,
Yep.
yeah, so that sounds like a wonderful idea behind the podcast.
Yeah.
How far do you want to take it? Is this something you'd like to do every 2 weeks and continue it for a long time? I mean, you're very young, so you could do this for many years.
Absolutely. I would love to continue this as long as I have content, and I don't think I'm going to run out of content. I can
And
always talk about my books. I can talk about things with work, issues I've seen with work. There's so much in ACT and mindfulness to talk about reviewing books. There's so much in psychology to talk about. I've reached out to a few other people to come on. There's definitely plenty more people I want to come on that I have to reach out to. So there's so much I can do with this, and as long as people are enjoying it and getting something out of it, I would absolutely love to continue it. I want it to be a place where people learn and get inspired and see something different. And if people, like today, I was reading all these comments about a book review that was just posted about book one, and people were talking about how, oh, I didn't know this, I didn't know that, or this family member has autism, this one, has this, has that. That's what I want to do. I want people to be able to recognize certain things, go find resources, and have these things that can help them. So if I can do that and reach a broader audience, I'm going to keep doing it.
I think that's great
Thank
because I
you.
think, yeah, the thing I found out is when I was doing this podcast, I was thinking, well, how many authors can I speak to, right?
Yeah.
And are their books going to be any good? But what I found is everybody I've had on has some incredible story idea,
Right.
and they're reaching people with important subjects as well. Last week, a couple weeks ago, we had on somebody who was worried about the environment and everything. So she wrote these nonfiction
Yeah.
books for the environment, and they were terrific and everything.
It's
And there's so
amazing.
many talented, firstly, there's so many talented authors, and there's like a lot of talented illustrators out there,
Yeah.
and they're all over the world. I mean, in our first few books, we had a woman that was in Romania with the
Oh,
illustrations.
wow.
Yeah, and then
That's incredible.
the second one, where we did The Lizard Who Loves a Blizzard, that was our next children's book.
Yeah.
She's in Cuba. And you're
Oh
thinking,
my gosh, I didn't know that. And that book, it looks so adorable too.
yeah, and the illustrations are different and you're unique, and everybody has a unique style and everything. And I thought, I'm never going to run out of like speaking to talented
Right.
authors and illustrators for sure. And as I said, your idea is something that is important
Thank
because I wish I
you.
had known about it, when I was in school. I'm not going to date myself, but it was a while ago. But it's important that these books would be in schools now as well. So have you found that these books are being picked up by educational resources?
Yes, I have. That's the amazing thing. Because I have so many different festivals going on. I'm going to start reaching out to schools in November because I am just so ridiculously busy right now, and see if I can do school visits. But at my book festival, I had speech therapists come over. I had a BCBA come over. I had retired teachers come over and pick up my book. And, I gave them my information and told them, contact me, let's collaborate together, come on my podcast. So I'm
Yeah.
hopeful this weekend I'll get even more when I go to this book festival. So I've had a lot of people in the field really receive it and buy it, which I think is so incredible. And, I've had people put it in their child's school or their school that they're working in. And I think that's so amazing. And I just hope that really continues so it becomes a really good resource.
Yeah, that's terrific too. You mentioned
Yeah.
that having other people on. I mean, people who are going through, autism, or people
Yeah.
who are the caretakers of people with
Exactly.
autism. I think you can go so many different ways with this
Right.
podcast, and no matter which way you're going, you're going to be helping people as well. And to me, it's
That's
always
right.
about, as we mentioned before or earlier in the podcast, it's about communication, and communication is not just about talking, it's about listening. And as a society, I think we've lost that element too,
Right.
where we're answering to reply, but we're not answering after listening. So, and I think this is an important subject that you're delving
Thank
into and dedicating your life to, in that sense.
you.
So, so in this particular podcast, right? You mentioned it's every 2 weeks, right?
Uh-huh.
And they can find it on Speak Up Talk Radio,
Yep.
and it's called the No Limits Podcast, which is
Mhm.
great. This isn't You can go any way you want to go with this.
Oh,
So
yeah.
is this a particular podcast? Now, me being with an Apple iPhone, I listen to podcasts all the time on my iPhone. Is this something I could listen to on my iPhone or find it on my iPhone?
You should be able to. I'm working with a woman named Pat Rulo. I referred you to her. She's helping me get it everywhere. So it should be on Apple iTunes soon. I will be having her on for an interview as well because she's also an amazing entrepreneur. I love her. So it's slowly getting there. I just got on Google Podcasts, I think it was yesterday or Monday. So this is just the initial places of where it is. If you don't have like Spotify or the others, you can go to Speak Up Talk Radio, the website, bookmark it. It'll always be there. They also have other amazing podcasts, and it'll be on Apple soon. It's getting there slowly but surely, but it's coming out everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, people, that are listening, this is an audio file, but I can see Lisa, and behind her was a cat jumping off the top of something. And it's like, this is so funny. It's like, it's so typical of like doing a podcast, because we do it through a Zoom invite and we can see each other, but we use the audio file only, and everything. It was just funny that I saw the cat jump off.
I always
Top
forget
of,
he's there. You're not the
yeah.
first person to say that. I've had client parents say that. I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, I totally forgot. Like he's in the shot.
There's nothing like a pet, having a pet around, yeah, whether it's a
Oh,
dog
they
or
used to come to work with me when we first started doing telehealth. It's hilarious.
right, right. So this podcast will be aired on October 27th. So are there any
Yay.
festivals after that, or are you just gonna go look for the indoor ones after that?
So after that, I should know if I got into the indoor one. It's in Edison in New Jersey at the Raritan
Mm,
Convention Center. So pretty much
okay,
everybody here knows about that. So hopefully I have information on that. And I have the Collingswood Books Festival this weekend. And I am going to the Westfield Festival. It's just like a big festival with all kinds of different people selling things on October 9th. So it's busy, but it's fun. I'm going to be a little of
right,
everywhere right now.
right. And your next book is out in April, and then you have another book that you've written, and then you have plans to write books 5 and 6.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like
Yeah,
we'll have to have you on next April for sure,
I
when
would
it's
love
autism.
to.
Yeah, for autism month. So, and the name of the podcast is No Limits Podcast on
Yep.
Speak Up Talk Radio. And the book that we spoke about quite often in this podcast is called Let's Talk, A Story of Autism and Friendship. So Lisa Jacovsky, actually an excellent job
Thank
in
you.
bringing this subject to, hopefully people will like continue to like, I don't understand why, this is me just pontificating here, but I don't understand why any class would not pick up this particular book,
It's
because it's
so
a way
funny you
to,
say that because I actually had an interesting interaction at the Red Bank Festival when I was selling my book. I had a grandmother come over saying like, "Oh, my grandson has autism," and I was like, "Oh, that's great. Do you want to buy this for him?" And she's like, I don't know if my daughter would be okay with that." And I was like, "Okay, just gonna leave it alone." And that really comes down to parents not being open. He may have the diagnosis, but mom may not still be very okay with it. And that's really the reasoning why some people might shy away from it because they see the word autism and they may still think about it as negative. but that's what I'm trying to change. So, if people think that, their mindset is going to change eventually. It's part of why I'm doing the podcast. I want to reach a larger audience. I want to put more out there than what I can put in my books, and hopefully those mothers and fathers that come over and are nervous, they one day will change their minds about it.
I hope so, because I think a lot of people they see the word autism and they go, whoa, they get a little scared and everything about it. And they don't, as you said, they don't want to talk openly and honestly about the particular situation. So, but you're doing more to that. And as I said, that's why it's important that these particular school districts pick up this book, distribute it, let the kids read it, and let the kids talk about it.
Exactly. They need an open and honest conversation, like we were talking about with communication. And I've had so many of the reviews on Amazon say, like, this is such a good starter for that. And that is probably one of the biggest compliments they can pay me, because that's what I want. I want them to teach their neurotypical children to go up to the child with autism and figure out how to be friends with them. Don't let it stop them. Don't let any boundaries stop you. And that's really what it's about. And that's why too, I called my podcast No Limits, because it goes with my books. There's no limits. There's no boundaries. You're only limited by what you allow your child to do, so hopefully over time, it will continue to progress. It's been doing amazing, and it will change these families and change the view of autism.
Yeah, exactly. So great job, Lisa. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's great. We're going to have you back again for the next book.
Absolutely. I would love to.
Yeah, next April. And again, this is free on all platforms. Apples. I was going to say April. Apple, Spotify, Google Play.
We're talking about April.
Yeah. It's on our website, as well as YouTube website, magiceverywhereinc.com. Lisa, thanks again. And next week, join us for another edition of Magical Books for Kids. I'm Michael John Sullivan.
Thank you for listening to Magical Books for Kids, a podcast sponsored by Magic Everywhere INC, a company based in Florida, hosted by Michael John Sullivan. This is your place to hear the very best children's stories and an opportunity to get to know your favorite authors. Join us for another fun storytelling podcast next week.
And our website, magiceverywhereinc.com. Jennifer Decker, thank you so much for joining us on Magical Books for Kids.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to Magical Books for Kids, a podcast sponsored by Magic Everywhere INC, a company based in Florida, hosted by Michael John Sullivan. This is your place to hear the very best children's stories and an opportunity to get to know your favorite authors. Join us for another fun storytelling podcast next week.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we're almost in October, right? So it's like it's going to be 2022 at this juncture.
Yes.
So no matter what.
Yeah.
So no matter what you do at this point, it's going to be 2022. The year's gone so fast. Now, during the one last question, during the pandemic, how did you get through that particular part? Because, as you said, we were all on computers. We either were on our computers, or we're watching Netflix, or watching some kind of series or whatever. Children were home. The one thing I did find, and this is from a lot of people in the publishing business, is that children's books were red hot. Parents were buying children's books because their kids were home. That was one way to occupy them, a good way to occupy them. So how did you do during the pandemic with your children as well and your family?
I think I feel really fortunate to have a really supportive family. My husband is, very hands-on. We work really well together as a team. We talk every day, and discuss, what we need to do and how we're going to, get through different tasks and challenges that we might have. And, I like to talk to my boys about, what's happening, in an age-appropriate way, about our expectations of them, and make sure that we all have a balance because, it's very easy. My husband and I both work, and, we're both really busy, and so it's really easy to get quite absorbed in that. So, we try and make sure that we all get out, exercise and have, like find that balance. And, same with the kids and technology, whilst of course they're allowed to watch TV and so on. But, they've got to mix it up with, playing some sport and, getting outside and reading and, other activities. We've played a lot of Uno since the start of COVID.
Right. Yeah. So I guess we all adjusted in our ways. What I liked is that you had a game plan, that you communicated.
Yeah.
You made sure everybody knew what was going on. You communicated with your boys as well, which is wonderful. And I think if parents keep a consistent communication avenue open, I think that solves a lot of future problems. I think that's probably one of the most important things to get to discuss, right?
Yeah, and I think, something I heard recently is, you just take it one day at a time. Like at the moment, it's very hard to plan too far ahead. And I think it's just really important to, take it a day at a time and carve out small and achievable, goals. Let's get through this week, let's go for a walk. Hopefully we'll be out of it.
Yeah, and people realize when we're talking about cybersecurity and everything like that and being cyber smart, you mentioned something, it's good to get outside. It's good to get exercise as well. So that's important too. That's probably as important as being safety and everything like that. So the name of the book is How We Got Cyber Smart. And again, if you go to howwegotcybersmart.com, that's the URL for the website. I think if you Google that title, your name is going to pop up right away, Lisa. And and Instagram, How We Got Cyber Smart, Facebook, How We Got Cyber Smart. So I think this could be a great series. And as I said, it's going to be evolving for sure. There will be another TikTok. There's going to be, maybe there'll be another Facebook. Who knows? I think competition is always good, because then what it does is it's sort of like somebody looking over their shoulders to make sure that they're doing the right things. Because a lot of times these companies are not doing the right things. They're doing it in the name of money and page views and ad impressions and things like that. And that's not necessarily good for us as parents and for our kids and for their future generations. They're going to be our age someday. I tell my kids that. They refuse to believe that. They don't think it's possible to be my age, but it's going to happen to them as well and to their children. So this is a book, I think, that will continue to evolve with a series. So congratulations on approaching this, because it's important. This is a very important subject. So thank you for coming on for Magical Books for Kids.
Thank you so much, Michael. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. And I'll look forward to chatting to you about my next book.
Yes, and when your next book does come out, as I said, this is such an important subject that we need to upgrade the conversation and the things that parents and children are facing, because it's going to change and there are going to be more challenges and they're going to be deeper and tougher, in my opinion, because it's always been this way. So thank you so much again for joining us for Magical Books for Kids. This podcast is sponsored by Magic Everywhere INC, and our website. You can hear this particular podcast as well as the others free at magiceverywhereinc.com. And join us again for another free edition. It is free on all platforms. This podcast and all of our podcasts are free on all platforms, including Apple, Spotify, Google Play, our website, as well as YouTube. Thank you again. I appreciate you being on.
Thanks.
And we'll talk to you again next week right here on Magical Books for Kids podcast.
Thank you for listening to Magical Books for Kids, a podcast sponsored by Magic Everywhere INC, a company based in Florida, hosted by Michael John Sullivan. This is your place to hear the very best children's stories and an opportunity to get to know your favorite authors. Join us for another fun storytelling podcast next week.